Hi everyone, welcome to another This Week in Politics. Hoping you've had a beautiful week and your Christmas shopping is done. Uh, I know Parliament is closed, but I thought I'd come to you and have a chat with you about some of the stuff rounding out the year. So, there's a few things I need to get out. Um, I can't. Okay. So, this week came with a lot of awfulness. Um, so close to Christmas, there was that tragedy of um, the bouncy house. Scott Morrison has planned to visit the victims, just like he did for the bushfires. I hope he doesn't force people to shake his hand. He's made a big presser and he's going to turn this into a crazy photo op while parents are grieving. He has no intention of being sensitive to what's actually needed during this tragedy. Um, Bill Shorten already visited the families quietly to see if they needed anything. It wasn't until the public sort of let people know that he'd been there that we heard he was there. So, I mean, my deepest condolences to the parents of that tragedy. Um, I couldn't imagine what it would be like any time of year, let alone this time of year, to experience such awfulness. So I just want you guys to know that I understand that this time of year isn't great for everyone either. Um, for some people, it's wonderful. It's the best feeling that they've ever gotten. But for a lot of people, this time of year is hard. And I particularly think the people in the Bouncy House tragedy will be having a rough time. The public should be aware that he's there and that he will hustle. You know, I don't want anyone to feel like they should respond to the Prime Minister. You would think he'd learn after being booed at Bathurst. He just wouldn't go. That's not our Prime Minister. He is a constant embarrassment to everyone, and he's going to keep on moving. So that's what we've got to look forward to. One sec. Thought this was better set up than this. Okay. That is the beginning. I promise it'll get much more livelier as we get going. If you want to join me live on panel, click the comment section. So the next part I want to get to. The COVID response. Scott Morrison has now officially done it all. Everything from tipping his hat to anti-vaxxers to attacking premiers over lockdowns, not being able to handle the vaccination rollout, to not having a proper quarantine facility like he should. That's not all. He's managed to fight with Border Force in New South Wales last year. Every step of this, he has failed. Like one or two things, you could kind of go, okay, that's kind of understandable. But every single one, that's not me saying it, that's his own team. recognizing every time he has done something for COVID. Even the Liberal Party is like, oh, you know, he hasn't handled any of his parliamentarians that run around and spread disinformation like George Christensen or Craig Kelly or any of them. He has royally made a mess of this pandemic. But he gets worse. So on top of everything that he has done, in terms of his response, you would think he would attempt to get slightly better. No, Scott Morrison has told Australians that he's not worried about COVID infection spike. Yeah, you heard that here. He's not concerned about infection spike because in his mind, all them other bugger ups don't matter now. The country will be opened, and who cares if the hospitals get overrun? He is a colossal mistake. Not just like a little mistake. I mean like every kind of mistake. There isn't a moment where I look at Scott Morrison and I think, nailed it. I think, failed it. And that fundamentally is where we are at. But don't take my word for it. Take his whole party. Notice how they don't say a lot about the effort and they try and take credit for things that they haven't done in response to all of this. Where is Minister Greg Hunt? He's supposed to be the health minister, isn't he? I've barely seen him. He barely says boo. But that's, part of what he does. He thinks it's funny, to tip his hat to all these weirdos and do this stuff like it's, it's something he should do. And he thinks that this is an election winning strategy. Yeah, because I didn't just watch a whole presidential election get royally screwed because a president decided that masks didn't look good on him and vaccines were optional and lockdowns were just attacking governors everywhere. Like Mr. Morrison, if he's in serious campaigning mode, do not follow the Trumpy kind of idea. It won't end well. But don't take my word for it. Look at the polls. They're telling you it's a non-winning move. That's the really interesting thing here, is that he always thinks that miraculously that he should win. No, dude, it's not a thing. You don't just... The Liberal Party's level of entitlement of how they always think that they should just get what they want. It's appalling, and I don't know how we put up with it for this long. But, we'll have to see what it pans out to be. I mean, last year we even had him, trying to be only Prime Minister in New South Wales. Who remembers that little, bugger up? That's really, really interesting that when you have a look at the way that he responded last year, you would think eventually he would get slightly better, but he doesn't. He doesn't. And the public largely doesn't pay attention to how awful that response is. Like, no, I don't care if infections are going to keep rising. It's basically what he said. He's not concerned. He's not worried. He wasn't. He called the vaccination rollout not a race. Yeah, because we're all just sitting here in lockdown because it's not a race. I mean, he is the epitome of how to do everything wrong. It's not just like you get to walk around and pretend like you've got it all figured out. That's what he does, and he does it so confidently. If I had half the confidence, I always notice people with the level of confidence that Scott Morrison has, It's never earned. They don't earn it. They don't earn it through knowledge. They don't grow as people. Uh, he's an expert of nothing. How did he end up as our prime minister? Someone explain that part. I really want to know how that man is our prime minister. He has never ever held any job adequately that he's ever had. But again, ask him how Tourism Australia went. This is why I think it's important to remember he's not entitled to this job. He never bloody was. And I don't think Alan Jones can help him this time. Seems like his little online fiasco didn't go as great as what he thought he would. Sort of sounds a bit like the old man yelling into a void on Facebook. It's a bit funny, really. And that's, you would think for a guy that earned millions, he wouldn't want to do that. He already got his money. He already got his rorts. Why does he still need to be present in this? Because his old weird way of doing things seemed to be the natural fit. It never fitted. He just made it sound like they did. You know, why they attacked the ABC relentlessly and pretended like that was a thing. But I digress. I do have a point. So, in all of that, there's also the fact that he isn't too interested in getting the country on its feet. Not really. I haven't heard any new job announcements, and everything that he's announced, Labor have done before. Like the EV cars, I think that's the only thing, and he stole it. So, where Labor have like this daycare policy and jobs making policy, and you know, to restore TAFE and health and, you know, education, you know, they've got an environment policy, not just a booklet, a real policy. Yeah, that's right, folks. Now you know that Labor have a set in stone great policy that they can take to an election. And the little handbook won't get us laughed out of the little summits where Scott Morrison stands there and talks to an empty crowd. That'll be, you know, wouldn't it be nice to be respected again? I mean, you watch Scott Morrison constantly tip his hat to the US, and every time he did it, China would get a little bit madder, and then there'd be, you know, not just the barley industry or steel industry or the millions at wine industry and all these other things. The US would just pick it up. That's humiliating on so many levels. Like, what were they thinking? What was the nation thinking where they thought, no, that's our guy? How many drinks did you have before you now numbered the ballot? I need to know now. It's time to own up to your responsibility. Whoever voted for this, I swear to God, if you don't fix this time, because the LNP do not have a plan that gets us out of anything. If you want to see what a man looks like screwing up a COVID policy, Scott Morrison's for you. If you want to see what real leadership looks like, I think Anthony Albanese is a way out of this. Like, real leadership that we can look forward to. It's a shame because, you know, I'm watching things like there's hints that if Morrison loses the election, that there's going to be some really, really bad stuff happening. Turns out that's not all he wants to copy from Trump. Turns out that if he loses the election, which might be called around May, he might do a Trump and say it's all rigged, and issue a court challenge as the results to the results and take it to the courts. Um, Anthony Green has answered this as a hypothetical. And he says no. Once the writs are returned, it's for the court to resolve. If there is a problem, not a matter for the Governor General or Parliament to resolve. And you can only challenge an individual seat result. You can't challenge the election as a whole. So this person who was asking the question said he could attempt to trigger a QAnon card amongst the hardcore freedom marchers and suggest Albo is part of the global conspiracy, which wouldn't surprise me if he did. Scott Morrison is apparently fighting for their rights, which is he has the same policy as the states. Don't forget, while he's tipping his hat publicly to say one very stupid thing, there is a policy that definitely outlines the same as the ALP states. Anthony Green responded, "You watch too much US television. First, we have one electoral authority and one court to which the election can be appealed, not the multiplicity that exists in the US. Second, we do have 11 weeks between election day and inauguration day. We do not have 11 weeks between." Oh, so he's saying because we don't have that, it takes off from one leader to the other leader that same day. I do watch too much TV in the US, the commenter says. I did, especially on January 6th, when expectations of what should have happened went out the window. And of course, I don't for a moment entertain the idea that anyone would attempt it here for the reasons you said, which I will reference if anyone says it could happen. Footnote, I was prompted to dream up this far-fetched hypothetical after reading in a recent, very reliable survey. Just 26% of Republicans say Biden is the rightful winner of the 2020 election, and only 42% of Republicans have confidence in the outcome of the elections, compared to 80% of the Democrats. Bright the Line Watch study. There is a link to it all. Look, if he is stupid enough to go down the US sort of challenging the election results, I want to stress what a super bad idea this is for multiple reasons, not just one or two things here. There are multiple reasons why it would be a bad idea, because I believe that democracy is on the line in the US. So I thought I'd take a moment to bring you this weird moment with you that it is being discussed, and Twitter isn't the best place to be having these in-depth conversations. But we are talking to the experts of elections. Anthony Green is well known and well trusted for his election discussions. We do need to keep that in mind. Yeah, so I need you to know that that's definitely something that we should be taking note of. Look, if he does tip his hat to this slightly, and there is a chance that he might, we need to be ready. We really weren't for the US challenge. I didn't think it'd go that far. I mean, really, I'd be interested to see your comments to see if anyone was truly thought it would go that far. I mean, I knew the US was going a bit nutso with its whole election stuff, and he was wrecking the post office, which is no different than what our Prime Minister is doing. He tries to like dismantle the post office and muck around with the side edges of everything. And you could see him, doing dodgy things along the way. And so I'd be super interested to hear from you to see if this is a thing, to see if Scott Morrison was Trumpy enough to attempt something like this. I think because we do have this like a Westminster system, it's not possible to do it in the way that Trump did it. But I definitely think he has enough weirdos that would believe anything at this point. I mean, before I wasn't threatened by, the odd pop-up thing that would come around, in terms of conspiracy theories. For instance, I encountered numerous flat earthers. They're the interesting people. Talk to them about anything else and they're pretty normal. Just when they're talking about the earth, not so much. They were pretty harmless. Even the anti-vaxxer group was pretty tame until COVID. It was like this. They were saying ridiculous things, but it was like you could almost see them hyperventilating into this. And the pandemic just sort of gave it legs and it ran. And it became dangerous, but not just a little bit dangerous. Let me be fundamentally clear about how dangerous things got. We still have idiots taking to the streets that do not want any lockdown because it's just crazy with COVID. They do not want masks worn because they believe it affects their civil liberties. So they should get the right to just, spread a deadly transmissible disease around because, COVID. And they don't want to be vaccinated. So they essentially are fighting every step of this process. Do not be fooled. These people were looking for something just like this. This isn't new. This is not a new playbook. Is it? Okay. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Let me know if that's better or worse. And this is ultimately where we are at. Oh, my hair went like nuts. I really, really want to tell you that this is something that is unusual. I'd never even, I'm really going to show my ignorance here. I didn't know about any of this stuff. Before this pandemic, thank you. I really should tell me who's commenting because I get some great responses from you guys. I'm really, really going to tip my hat and tell you I'd never researched pandemics. I never even knew that it could get like this. But the second it happened, I didn't take it seriously either. It took this moment of having conversations with people that I realized, no, these are real things. Actually, the guy who sat on the fence the longest in my house, my husband, to get vaccinated, was the one who showed me it could be serious. He knew. I didn't. It didn't take me long to get on board with what was happening, but I definitely think I waited too long to take this thing seriously. It doesn't matter what I'm doing now. The thing is, I let it go too long to say what I needed to say. And I was listening to the US reports, and there were things that I probably should have said, and people who did know more thank you for coming out and reaching me and saying, hey, this thing's serious. It took a lot. And now I understand so much more for this. This COVID experience made me realize that bad things like this do happen, and there isn't anything you can do about it. And the Prime Minister won't take it seriously. Forget the fact that he ruined the vaccine rollout. Forget the fact that it took Kevin Rudd to call the Pfizer company to jog things along. Forget the fact that he fought with Border Force. Forget the fact that he physically went out of his way to turn this into a political game for him. These are all things that he is doing actively. My husband said the same thing. Yes, you can come in. I do have it as top comment to click the StreamYard thing. And all you have to do is click that and it should let you up. I really, really want you to know that this isn't normal. None of it is. But this is our new normal. And the things I've learned along the way, because of the community that I have around, I wouldn't have known. Scott Morrison didn't just bungle one or two things in amongst what I was learning. He also made it difficult to understand. What I'll do is, one sec, I will try and drop it in the Facebook comments to make sure that you can get up. Took this moment. Okay. Hold on. How do I get... I'm trying to bring up a very, very loved friend, and I'm trying to because I think she brings a beautiful aspect to what we need. Hello. But this wasn't just the Prime Minister. There was a whole cabinet behind him that should have taken this seriously. It was their job to make sure that we took it seriously. And it took them so long to do that. Not just in terms of the quarantine facilities, which we had, learned the LNP sold off. That in itself is a sign that I'm going to drop that link again, and hopefully my dear friend will be able to see it on the StreamYard chat. And the problem is that we now are at a point where we need to get the country vaccinated. It's now open. And Christmas is coming, and we've seen enough sadness. So my last holdout, like I told you last week, was my husband. He's now double vaccinated. But if it wasn't for him talking to me about this pandemic, I don't know if I would have gotten through this. He'd already learnt about the other pandemics. He was more than informed. Apparently there weren't any vaccines for the other ones. And he talked about it like whoever lived, lived, and whoever died, died kind of thing. And there was quarantining, and there was wearing a mask, and there was staying home. And these things took a little bit to learn. And we all had to do that. And there were people that definitely were holding like freedom protests. When I learned that, I was like, are you for real? There's like a thing where people would reject sound science. Like, that's real. You would go against science. Now, I'm not the greatest educated, putting my hands up to that one right now, but I never thought that there would be a full-on community of people that went around and openly supported this idea of just sort of pretending like it's not a thing and that their civil liberties were more important. So if this disease is going to be with us till 2024, what happens? What happens to how we're going to live? And in leading on to this election, it's going to matter who's in charge of that. Do not forget in that mind part where you're trying to figure out not only about how to vote this election, you need to vote on this pandemic. Whether you thought it was fine that he forgot the vaccines and he didn't take quarantining seriously or build any facilities until the premiers bullied him, or that he bullied the premiers about having lockdowns. You know, this is the thing. We need to take this seriously. I really, really want to stress to you guys, this election, I've learned so much more. I A/B tested a few things and I'm not as confident as I want to be. So I want to stress out there that this isn't just about getting us through to the next election. This is about changing a nation. There is now a clear difference, not just in policy, but in outright differences that we're going to see in handling the pandemic and education and a whole bunch of other things. This time, we need to be united. We all need to come to the same message and say the same thing. I haven't yet heard a positive, proper policy from the LNP. I am looking for it. Wait, because I'm evil and I want to steal it if it actually is good. But they've never, ever brought out a good policy. The only one I can remember was John Howard's one on guns. The only one where I can go, hey, you know, that was kind of decent. You know, by and large, we haven't got what we've needed. Not just during this moment, but through the whole, I think it's 8 years now we are down this line with this party. You know that when they first got elected, the very first thing they did was cut school funding. I then had to buy tissues for my children for the whole classroom. I had to buy whiteboard markers. I had to buy pens for the teachers. Just a whole bunch of things. We even had to bring in toilet paper rolls. That really happened. We were instructed to that fees would be going up and a whole bunch of things started happening. Now, when I went to that first education rally, this was my first moment I dipped my toes into politics. First one. I didn't care that I bought those things, but I don't think I should have had to have. I think if we had a Labor government, that wouldn't have happened. But it didn't end there. I got sick and I needed a hospital treatment. And in that hospital treatment, some of it wasn't covered anymore. So I thought, people are going to notice this, right? You know, this stuff was covered before. People are going to see it. You know, this is like 5 alarm bells are going off. And that's what I thought would happen. You know, we would all magically see it and it would, we would do something. and we didn't. And we're stuck with this same old. And even some on the left, like, no, Labor's not doing good enough for me yet. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Labor's not perfect, but they're not actively burning stuff. Oh my God. I was like losing hair. Clumps in my hair. This is why it's so fragile. Because the healthcare costs were going up. The education costs were going up. And it wasn't just that. There was a moment with the kids where even we were talking about what would happen for a university degree. And university degrees were going up. And the cranes went down. I remember when I was little, I was told the more cranes you see in the sky, the more your government worries about building up things for you as a nation, like bridges and highways and stuff. Yeah, I have to agree with this comment on screen. COVID will be with us forever. I believe that too. But I don't think it's just the right wing. I've seen, I'm going to say it, I've seen some people posing as left wingers say things that are very anti-vaxxer, and it's scary. You know, I don't know when we become this nation of not trusting institutions. The other thing I noticed was I had a little girl when the LNP first got in. They started to like make these gradual cuts to the ABC. And they weren't just taking one or two things. They were taking huge chunks of it. And the kids' shows were getting smaller and smaller in time slots. And the staff was getting less and the quality was going down. And he kept hearing about these bushfire responses from the ABC not being able to cover as much. They did an excellent job, by the way, of covering the bushfires. But imagine how much they would have done if we had an ALP government that funded the ABC properly, that kept everyone informed on our bushfire response. And not just put Ida Buttrose in there because she campaigned for him a couple of times. Imagine that response difference. That stuff matters. There is a kids show going on right now. It's called Bluey. It's on the ABC, and the kids love it. It's a worldwide hit, right? Now that looks like it's on the line for the ABC because it costs a fair bit to make. So this isn't like we've got this one thing going on in this corner. I picture our political space like there are different parts that all need to come together. The LNP don't have an environmental policy. They don't have an education policy. They don't have a funding for our ABC or bushfires. Where are the planes we were promised, FYI, for the fires? Someone needs to tell me where those planes are because I haven't seen them. Have you? I know that Anastasia and Dan Andrews have struck an agreement to, I think they're going to share planes or something. Oh my God. Hey, you would think him forcing himself on the person, that woman last time, and forcing to shake her hand was cringy enough. Imagine if these people, more of them lose their homes this summer because he didn't think that their homes were worth saving. No. He'd rather go to Tasmania for photo ops to pretend like he cares about kids in bouncy houses, when in truth, he'd be asking Jen what to say and how we got there. Or even if he asked Jen. I mean, this is what's driving me crazy. We have an opportunity to do better. Yeah, Anastasia bought us the planes and is sharing it with Victoria. That's part of how insane that is. I mean, has anyone ever thought about that out loud? That we don't have a response for this. He never had a response to COVID. When the Big Princess thing happened, he was gone. Gone. I'm amazed he didn't go back to Hawaii just to avoid it. Like, no. I'll fight with everyone about it. That was his sort of responses. I'll just fight the premiers and whatever happens, happens. This election, we can't get caught up in what we think a party should be. We should get caught up in what's going to make the nation better. And we're a very unhealthy country at this current state. If we don't get the climate policy back on track, if we don't get those planes and enough of them to firebomb, because we're a hot nation. I am on fire. You can see sweat on my face. That's real. And it's like late enough here for that not to be a thing. That's part of where we are at. And I don't think that there will ever be a moment I'm hoping it's Labor. They do have the best policies. He didn't visit the families of the kids lost in that house fire back in November. Could there be that there was no votes in it? No. How could he garner votes in doing that? Someone would have asked, hey, where's the planes? And, stuff. They would have asked him a good question. And that would have been part of what happens now. That would have been his ultimate response. But don't take my word for it. Listen to him. He's outwardly saying he doesn't care. He will go to the mic and make all these amazing speeches. And then you're like, hey, where's the stuff you said that you were going to give us? Oh, yeah, that thing. And the press doesn't do a good enough job in covering this. They don't do a follow-up question. Like, if I was standing there for the love of God, I'd love to just ask, hey, where's the stuff you said you're going to bring us? And why did you do it like that? Why did you promise and never deliver? Like, those are the sorts of questions I would ask. I would be like Amanda Baxter was to Dan Andrews, only I would be honest about my questions. I watched her trying to eviscerate Dan Andrews every day. And because I'm obviously not in Victoria, but I was watching like the COVID response all around the country. And I was watching some very... So we have the journalists there. I know that because I watch them attack Labor premiers. And I'll watch them go like little attack dogs. And they don't actually ask anything of substance. And they could. There were plenty of things that we could have asked. But I've never heard them ask the Prime Minister a good question. And even if they do, he'll go, why are you attacking me? It's a weird thing that they never answer a real question. Here's the thing. I remember last time with Bill Shorten, him saying that the whole Space Invaders thing. I have to wonder, will the same tactic be used on Anthony Albanese? Anthony Albanese, if you listen to what he's saying, oh my God, he sounds like a statesman. He says things and you have to stop and listen and know that what he's saying is real. And I really, really want to discuss why that matters. It's not just what's coming out of his mouth. Every time Labor gets in, they do improve life. Life is always better, and that's been shown as an economic point. See, this happens to me too. He and I have a weak stomach. Anyone who knows me knows this. And it's, he does have this like thing where he's like, I'm praying for you. No, dude, we don't want your prayers. We want the stuff. We don't want you to pretend like you're praying for stuff. You're in a prime minister's position. Deliver the stuff. Just do it. You know, it's not even that difficult. The issue right from the start was about emerging new variants. The old strain still is 93% of vaccinations across the country over 5 years and above should put that into herd immunity situation. Even if we do reach herd immunity, you can still get this disease. It won't be as deadly, but you still will get the disease. And let's be fundamentally clear about what that means. There will be some people that still will pass away and that will be fully vaccinated. I don't want to give you this idea that being vaccinated is like a silver bullet in one of them Hollywood movies. It's not. It gives protection for the best of what your immune system has. There will be still people that need to sit this one out. And that's the real tragedy of this. From everything I've learned and read, there is a doctor I'm listening to in the UK, and he's looking at the Omicron variants. And as interesting as what he is, he does express some positivity that it has morphed into this Omicron version. Apparently you don't get as sick, and there's a couple of things that go on with that. But this is only in people that are vaccinated. The highest death toll still remains in people that aren't vaccinated. So this is why I'm pushing for this. And keep in mind, I do know real life anti-vaxxers, and I engage them. I don't engage them because I like the trolling or I like anything. I do something that the Prime Minister should do. And I engage them because I love the idea of, even if we're fighting, I want you to live. Even if you vote Pauline Hanson, God willing, I want you to live. I know that that's a fighting chance out of this. I don't see a political moment in getting vaccinated. I don't think it's political. I do not think this virus cares who you voted for. The only ones that do are the Conservatives. They want to make it a big deal because that's all they've got. Name me a policy. Just someone randomly name me a policy that they've got that's winning. They don't have one. So they need this huge dog whistle from the anti-vaxxer groups and all these other groups that turn it into a shit show. Sorry for the language, but that's how I feel. I don't know if you guys have enjoyed the anti-vaxxer mob, but I have, and it's quite visceral, and it's awful. You know, the saddest thing is that it's someone that I really, really do love. Like family, like blood family. It doesn't get easier because I want it to. There isn't a moment I don't reach out to him saying, my God, I love you. Please get vaccinated. Please. My please never go anywhere. And he sends me these crazy links that aren't scientific. I debunk them each time. But doing that seems to make him angrier. And I don't know if you've enjoyed this, but it hurt. It hurt so much. All I wanted was for him to live. And I wanted him to say, I get it. This isn't about politics. Because he truly believes that in a few years' time that this vaccine is going to kill me. He sent me enough material where he truly believes that the vaccine is more deadly than the disease. What do you say to that? And that was hard. And it's been 7 days since I spoke to him. I've tried to reach out. He hasn't responded. And I think that that's why I'm feeling emotional over it. Because all I want to do is hear him say, I get it. He's going to lose his job. He has a well-paid job in government. And he's going to lose it if he hasn't by now. Because he won't do it. He for months ranted about this exemption. Sure, if you need it, but I don't think he needed it. But I'm not a doctor. So when I'm pleading with this community about what we need to do to get out of this pandemic, I don't mean just voting. I don't mean just wearing a mask. I don't mean just getting vaccinated. I don't mean just one of the things. I mean all of the things. I need you to reach out to those who are struggling and they're having genuine moments. And I mean, this isn't as crazy as like the US crew that thinks JFK is going to come back alive and they're all going to get rid of Biden or something. I mean, that's a real thing that they're really doing. That same group is gathering because they think JFK is going to come back alive and he's going to take over the top job. That's where we're at. But don't take my word for it. Look this stuff up. And do not think that we aren't that crazy at times. You had Avi Yemeni harassing cafe diners. And if you don't know who he is, oh my God, do not look him up. It's an awful situation. You know how every week I say go and look at Friendly Geordies and look him up? I'm saying the opposite about Avi Yemeni. He's viscerally a bad human. He doesn't mean good for anyone on this planet. And he's not gonna. He attacks people in the middle of the street. Like, just yells at them randomly. And with this rebel news. And they keep talking about how tall he is. I don't care how tall he is. Doesn't faze me even a little. He could be 20 foot tall. I don't think that's the issue. Do you know what I think the real issue for him is? Is that he says terrible things and he lies to people about this pandemic. Here's what interested me. I found this thing where he was talking about the whole anti-vaxxer movement as a whole. And he was saying things like, it's all a hoax and you don't have to take anything seriously. And it's all done because they're wanting to control you. That's something that he truly said. The moment he was challenged on it, he got angry and he got his bodyguard to shove people around. That's scary. But I have something else that I just found that I want to discuss with you guys. Where'd it go? There was another statement that Scott Morrison made that I don't think made a lot of headlines, saying that people should not care too much. Australians can forget about relying on the old age pension. When they retire, the age pension should no longer be seen as an entitlement, but a welfare payment. Now, that's something you've paid into your whole lives. You paid for it. That is yours. That's not welfare. No.
That's something you paid for. It's something that he's never ever going to take seriously. The old age pension is designed, particularly when you're a woman, you won't get as much in your retirement. Why is that? Because quite often you need to dip out of the workforce for a little while, because they don't really have a policy for paid parental leave or childcare, which Labor does do that. But we're talking about down the line, all right? Women will, by and large, need a larger portion of this, right? Because quite often they opt out of the workplace to have children. The Liberal Party doesn't see it as you've earned it. They see it as they've earned it for themselves, and they keep upping the payment of that parliamentarian payment or whatever it is that they get when they leave. That's real, okay? They think they earned every penny of that, but you didn't. Doesn't matter if you're the majority and you paid for it, and it doesn't matter if you're paying for them. None of that matters. Do you know what matters to them? It matters to them that they get to take it home and you don't. That concerns me. Some of my family members would rather take advice from social media over what they've said. And I have a background in science. My children do too. My eldest, he has a background in science. I originally had him in at this Christian school when they were littler. And I had him in it because that was the best in that town. It was a tiny little town where nothing really happens. And I'd been to the public schools in that area, and they just wasn't great. It did the typical rural thing. And for me, that's what the experience was. I don't know what other rural schools are like. But in this particular area, I had them in a private school. And when I moved them out of that and I moved interstate, into Queensland, and I put them in a public school, my children took to science like a fish in water. And it wasn't just a little, it was a lot. And that matters because the stuff they were telling me mattered. Fun fact, I believed in science because they showed me how to. My children have taught me so much along the way. Never forget, a young voice is something that we should all be listening to. Youth is not a hindrance to knowledge. It's actually where it begins. And when you're hearing them say something, really listen. My kids told me about what was going on and how the public response was and how I should approach it. They even spoke to me about that family member that's still a holdout. They think that it's too much damage for me right now to try to reach back out. So they've asked me to not do that. Not because they don't want to see this family member come out the other side of this, but because of what it might do to me. Yeah, and it could do some real damage. There was a couple of days there where I didn't shower and I couldn't get up because I really wanted to save him more than what he wanted to save himself. This wasn't like a thing that we invented, to make people feel like we were more knowledgeable. I knew nothing. Only what the doctors were saying, and I went and spoke to my GP, and my GP was saying, hey, yeah, you definitely need to get vaccinated. You're definitely in like half a dozen issues with your health. Now, that's something I want to touch on. The Interlude card, they plan to roll that out way more. Not only do they plan to this one makes me super upset because that card, they want to push that on to pensioners. They're A/B testing the public on that one right now, as to whether anyone on the old age pension should be on that interlude card. Why? Because that makes Forrest Twiggy money. He's making a killing, and anyone that has like shares in this little scam, they're making a buck over this. Dude, it's a scam. This is like their most epic evil genius moment ever, because they could essentially profiteer off all of this. I have to say that this was their most genius thing. They pretend like they cared about the community. They didn't care if people couldn't make their rent payments because it wasn't allowed to in private rentals and all that kind of thing. It was crazy. You couldn't give your kids money to go to the canteen with or anything. Buying school uniforms and school equipment, buying secondhand things for them to do. Nah. That was a rort. Understand this. That was a rort, and they plan to go bigger. Do not be fooled. They will go bigger. Oh, yeah, by the way, remember last time they said that Labor was going to introduce a death tax? Oh, yeah, that's still on the sneaky card agenda too. I'm hearing whispers in amongst them that they plan on a real death tax. That was said not long after the last election, but they're kind of A/B testing it. A/B testing is where you go out to the public and then you go, I really want to see how the public responds to this. I'm going to give them a nice little warm, I'm against this. And then a few weeks later, they're forgotten. And then I'm going to give a nice warm, I'm for it. And whatever polls better is what they're going to do. But sometimes they just do it. And they just sort of slide it in underneath the legislation. Do not be fooled. They've got some real sneaky plans. Now, this comment here, the real agenda is to get retired people who own their homes into newfangled reverse mortgages. Yeah, I've heard about this before. So they don't receive a pension, and those who don't own a home to get their pension via the interlude card. People will be bullied into it, though. Just remain in control of their finances. If they were serious about dealing with this interlude card, they would make sure that if you were paying at a real estate, there wouldn't be a cap on it. If you were in a grocery store, there wouldn't be a cap on it. If you were dealing with an issue at a school, there wouldn't be a cap on it. See, it was really interesting what they did. They wanted to make people's life a lot harder for no reason. It didn't have any benefits to the outback. We've seen what it did. Do you know what happened? It got a lot of people to move off country and live in a place that didn't have it. Because I've seen people moving south, to avoid the card. You hear them talk about it, how they couldn't pay for things for their kids. And understand that if they do this to retirees, they will never win another election. Their biggest voting bloc is retirees, because they're still buying the Daily Telegraph. They're still watching daytime TV shows, and there's no journalist that holds them to account. So this is their biggest voting bloc. It would be interesting to see if they could make the rhetoric sound like it was a good thing coming for the retirees. I would like for someone to let me know if that if they believe that they could sell this one to the public. Because like all their other little evil things, you watch them for long enough and they sort of slip things in there, and you watch them and they're kind of sneaky. And you're like, oh, how'd you get that by? And it's the weird part is that they kind of dob on themselves. Every time you hear what they think that they reckon Labor is going to do, listen to it carefully, because it's actually a plan of theirs. Like the death tax, they really do have a plan on that one. That's a real one in the pipeline that they've really got going. Don't take my word on it. Watch the cycles, because every time, look at how they trashed the electric car thing, right? Now they're running to the next election to get this electric car thing going. Not only because they know it's popular and this is how it's going to go, but for another reason. Because everything that they try and trash is widely popular. They don't actually have a strategy to go to the next election with. I've been listening, like, it's weird because I have to listen to what Scott Morrison says. Like most of you, I'd like to just turn it off and go, no, not today. But I have to like listen to what he's saying so I can come to you and then go, no, he's legit going to do it. And that's how it's going to go down. So this election cycle, I want you to watch everything that he says Labor is going to introduce. They tell on themselves. Watch body language specialists. They actually tell you it's a thing called leakage, and they dob on themselves. And they're like, I might. Labor is going to introduce this. That's another word for saying, no, we're testing if we can do it. But that's super interesting, because if they actually implement some of this stuff, that's like their bigger bill. They A/B tested that too. First they were saying, no, we're really not for this. And then they actively went out and campaigned for it. If you see them, some of the really big hardcore Conservatives really are going to their electorate saying this bigger bill will get by. But then you've got this, like, they pretend that they're moderates. They're fake liberals that run around pretending like they're part of the bigger agenda or whatever. And you hear them say something like, no, I don't think that bill is popular at all. And you hear the whispers in the parliament because they dob on each other. They're not even like quiet, almost like the sex scenes that they were doing in the prayer room, a parliament. Nothing ever stays secret in there for long, people. Understand this. They cannot wait to tell on each other. They are huge little dibber-dobbers. So do not be surprised that they're telling on each other now. Remember when Christian Porter got a bit of the bad press, and then the press couldn't wait to say that he was doing all these other things? They cannot wait. When Barnaby Joyce had his scandal, and it just kept coming and coming and coming, because they like to knife each other. It's this really weird sycophantic thing that they do in the Liberal Party, where they attach themselves to the leader, right? And you watch the leader, and he's like, I'm really, really into this party. But behind the scenes, he's putting in the hatchet to make sure he's got the top job. And I call it a male because it's predominantly the men. And you hear him say things like, I don't know who leaked that. And you watch their eye movement, and they're like one of them old-timey shows that you see, like, where you could clearly see that they were lying. It's crazy. And then you've got the press going, I have inside sources. Basically what they're saying is loads of people in the Liberal Party like to dominate each other. And trust me, we had a raft of like resignations before the last election. This one, it's going to be huge, because some of them aren't going to want to sign on to this bigger bill. Some of them are openly fighting about their COVID response. Some of them are fighting about what's going to happen with future policies. Some of them are embarrassed about what happened overseas and the response to our climate change policies. And they're openly having a bit of a war right now. Not like ever that we've seen before. The other wars turn into this whole thing about who's leader. Actually, they're having a war about who's in the party. And you had different LNP people saying last week, no, George Christensen isn't actually really part of our party. Like, okay, dude, but why is he voting with you then? Why does he still have a seat? So they're actively in the middle of a war. And no, this isn't like the moderates are fighting with the extremists, because they're all really, really extreme, and they all have the same fundamental goal. They actually do want all the awful things in that big ball of awfulness. But widely, the voter ID bill that they're tipping their hat to with Pauline Hanson, that's going to be one to watch, because a lot of them are actually anti that bill. The voter ID bill. And why they're anti it is because of all the COVID check-ins and stuff and having to prove that you're vaccinated. I just don't think they're going to want people to show ID to vote as well. And it's not popular. I haven't seen one person say, hey, because we've never had they put it across as like the Trumpy election integrity. You know, they did come out and say to the public, we have an election integrity issue. And if we're honest, we've never had an election integrity issue. We had a few years ago about 800 ballots fell off the truck, literally in Western Australia, I think it was. Don't quote me on the state, but I remember it did happening. About 800 ballots literally fell off the back of a truck. Now, Bob Catter is actually mad about a few different things. He has signed on to the Clive Palmer sort of ethos. He's pro-guns. He's pro the anti-vaxxer movement. He's he talks about freedom, and he's very, very Trumpy in a way. Only he doesn't have the same kind of money Clive Palmer does. But if you notice how quiet it went very quickly, I thought Clive Palmer's party didn't have enough members to sustain itself. So it would be interesting if they even have the numbers to run next election. The last I heard that they would be disbanded because they didn't have enough numbers, which would explain why Craig Kelly was so vital to this. And the LNP wanted to keep the fringe part of the crazy. A lot of them are the anti-voter ID bill because it's the LNP who cheat. The young lib tactic is to vote more than once. See, I've heard that too. I've never ever been able to prove it, but inside sources do say, like, I literally talk to people that are there. And they have said to me before, hey, the young liberals are pretty feral, and the main liberal don't really want anything to do with them. But at the same time, they don't want it to, these fringe parts are becoming more and more popular. And you hear them say things like, oh, we're not really associating ourselves with that, but they are. They're going to these rallies for them. They're stirring up a lot of stuff. They're feeding the young liberals a lot of lines. And they're openly anti-Semitic. They're openly racist. They're openly anti-women. Have a look at what they did to Brittany Higgins, for instance. They've really tipped their hat too far this time. Scott Morrison tried to, dance with this group a little bit with the whole, it's a freedom thing, I suppose, for vaccines. He genuinely lent into this. So don't be fooled. They are serious about these fringe agency of these parties, and they're largely calling themselves independent, but a lot of them are ex-liberals. For instance, Clive Palmer was part of the Liberal Party. Bob Catter, Pauline Hanson, they were all part of this, excuse my French, shit show of the Liberal Party. They really did do this. And not only were they for what the Liberal Party was doing, they actively signed on the dotted line for everything these independents wanted. Okay. The potential Labor Party cabinet would be far more balanced and more effective across the board, particularly the women members. Now, if you notice that the Liberal Party does have a women problem too, their women have actively said it that they're campaigned against, and they're sort of shuffled out of the leadership roles, where Labor actively has a policy that says, no, actually, we have women here and let's promote them up because they're just as talented as the men. Because that's what we should have been doing. Because one of our most effective prime ministers was a woman. That's a super duper important point. These women mean a lot. Have a look on any day of the week. I challenge you to listen to a Penny Wong speech. She's articulate. She knows exactly what her talking points are, and they are talking points. Every politician has them. And whether it's party line or not, sometimes she doesn't toe the party line even. She gets a little bit controversial, but in a good way, because I believe that she challenges the narrative that's carried and she improves it. Look, I can't wait to see what Anthony Albanese will do as leader. But down the road, I do want to see another female prime minister. I think that that's going to be something that we're going to need. I want to see, because I'm going to say it, I think Penny Wong has the same charisma and the same amazingness that Jacinta Ardern does. You know what? And she talks to everyone like they're human. I'm not saying that Albo doesn't, because of course he does. But I think when we're down the line and after this election and a few, years of having Albo, I think we do need to look at another female prime minister. And not because the men aren't great, because they truly, truly are, but because our most effective prime minister has been a woman. And, you have a look at the feral crossbench that she had, that Julie Gillard had. It was feral. It was like this crazy moment, and she passed the most legislation. So that's super important to keep your eye on. I think Albo can do it. And I think that if we vote right, we can have an effective Senate and we can have an effective House. And I want to make sure that you understand this. Follow the pattern to get Labor in. Like, number one, Labor all the way along. Now, why do I say that? Because all of these sideshows typically align themselves with the LNP. Like how I discussed before with like the categroups and for instance, Julia Banks, independent, ex-Liberal. Pauline Hanson, ex-Liberal. Cora Bernardi even had a party there. The Liberal Democrats, another part of the Liberal Party. The independent vote was designed to keep the Liberal Party in power. Why? Because the Liberal Party have no policy. So a good way to prop them up and to keep them in government is so the independent vote makes it look like they're not tipping their hat to the very awful part of the party, yet they still get to maintain power. I remember when independents were starting out, Now, if you a bit of a political in their person like me, you would have been watching, right? One of the reasons that they were so keen to get rid of Pauline Hanson was because she said things, not just offensive things. Oh no, she garnished a lot of votes in the beginning. Tony Abbott was threatened by her so immensely, and he hadn't yet figured out how to dance with her. See, now the Liberal Party have learned how to tango with these people. So now they kind of encourage this thing. Not kind of, they literally encourage this like independent vote where they get to maintain power. Hence why they were like, Clive Palmer, do your thing. I won't tip my hat to you publicly, but privately just hand me your money. And publicly, I'm not going to say, we're for you. What does that mean? It means openly that by and large, independents are helping the Liberal Party. There are a few that won't, but the numbers just aren't there. In some places, an independent will be your best option. In some very small regions, because it's either that or a Liberal Party person. And I say this because I want you to understand how they've managed to game the system. If you notice, Labor doesn't do this. Labor openly says, look, we kind of want to be the majority, so our policies get up first. One of the reasons that they don't tip their hats to all these fringe parties is because the Labor Party as a whole is strong enough to say, because the Liberal Party can never win on their own. That's why they need the Nationals. That's why they've needed the Tea Party, because their policies are so awful. So what they do is they essentially go, we know we're on the nose. We actively know that. So we're going to have all these fringe sort of things going on. Where the Labor Party says, our policies are strong enough. Let's go to the election as a group and not tip our hat to some of the fringy, lunatic-y kind of groups that reach out to the NRA like Pauline Hanson did. Yeah, see, this is huge too. A lot of female Labor Party members don't play the gender card, and neither did Gillard. The only time that was that one speech where she was like, Tony Abbott's a misogynist. Why would I ever take advice from that man? But even then, you had people like Alan Jones saying, put her in a chaff bag, and, they all behaved abhorrently. While they're over there acting like male ickiness, the filth of them. Julie Gillard still had the grace. While they're drawing pictures of her with her boyfriend in the Australian flag, if you don't remember how grotesque that was, look it up. They literally did that to her. While they were saying that her dad would have rolled over in her grave, while they were openly coming after her. If you see them attack like that, that means that person's effective. So every time you see them going after Labor in this hyperventilated way, remember, Labor have said something that they don't like, and it's popular. Take a look at the car policy. They're like, no, it's going to ruin your weekend. Why? They could never show how. But they said it, and the media ran with it. See, without the media, I don't even think they ever would have gotten elected. I think that the media played this really, really awful role in getting them elected too. Keep in mind, who is running the ABC right now? Ida Buttrose. She campaigned openly for the Liberal Party several times. Outrageous. Peter Van Onselen, best friends with Christian Porter. Bit weird, Patricia Karvelis regularly has meetings and lunches with them. So they can say the odd great thing. They will do this odd little dance so they pretend like they're not being partisan about it, and they're just sort of leaning into this a little. But it's all a lie. The media is complicit in this because the media makes a lot of money. How much money? A lot. They're part of the 1%, actually. Have a look at the local Sky News broadcaster, what they earn. And they're not paying tax on. So they're going to lean into it. They're going to lean into it wholeheartedly. Now they're rolling out Sky onto free-to-air TV. Why would they do that? Peter Costello now runs Channel 9. Now, if you were playing fair, you couldn't get a job like that. If you were doing the right thing, you wouldn't need a job like that. If your party was popular enough on its own, you probably wouldn't need a job at the head of 9 or the ABC or at Sky News. And take a look at that chunk that they grabbed. And then every week, until Pauline Hanson got too offensive, 7 News was openly paying for Pauline Hanson's appearances and Mark Latham's. I don't know if they still have Mark Latham on there. I don't know how many people know this, but when Mark Latham was part of the Labor Party, they kind of weren't interested in him. Now that he's this right-wing conservative hellhole of a man that is too busy breaking people's arms, yeah, he did that. Now they're interested in him. But that's a super interesting point. Why do I bring us to what they do? Why would you have someone that's fringy like Pauline Hanson on your show and act like she's speaking for Australia? Why would you do that? What part of normal could you have Pauline Hanson on? In any normal scope. And do you know how much it took to get her off the air? How far she had to go before they're like, yeah, okay, we've paid her for enough appearances. You might be right. It had to get pretty darn bad. And why did they tip their hat to her so quickly? See, if it wasn't helping the Liberal Party, would they not have done it? Would they have not done the clickbaity thing of having Pauline Hanson on there? The other interesting thing is why the Liberal Party tips their hat so much to Pauline Hanson. Why did they merge the family court with the other courts? Because her son was on a DV charge and they wanted to merge it all into one and make it an even worse situation. For people already experiencing family court, it's already awful. It's already painful to enter the family court system. So you're already experiencing a hardship. Now it's considerably worse because of what they did. They did a deal with her. The Jackie Lambie deals. Why would they do a deal with Jackie Lambie? What did she give them? If the deal was so great, how come she doesn't tell people what it is? See, now these are really interesting questions. I've never been able to get an answer out of Jackie Lambie. Have you? What did she get and how much did she get of it? Because as far as I seen, she was tipping her hat to get that healthy welfare card rolled out more. Even though she was very opposed to it, what did she get that was so amazing that she needed to sell out the country for? It's an interesting moment and not one response. The Liberal Party seem to be doing these nasty little backroom deals. Now, it's not uncommon for political figures to do backroom deals, and I'm sure they're quite regularly done on no matter which side of politics you follow. But how dirty was the deal if you can't even tell people what you got? What did Jackie Lambie sell her soul for? And will she do it again? I don't know. One has to hope that she's sick of doing deals with people like that. I believe that she says the right things, but when it comes to the commitment part, she bails. And I think that that's a real shame, because I think that she does have very good speaking capabilities. And, I think that the Liberal Party does bully her. I think that they bully her and knock her around a little. Here's the thing. She may have been on the battlefield, but in the war of conversation, the Liberal Party definitely has her bending. Why? Because she's on her own. Because they've got the media on their side. They've got them, this huge party backroom board deal that can be done. And because she is just one human. Imagine having a whole party come and attack you because you didn't do this thing for them. The Liberal Party is vicious. Do not underestimate the level of cruelty that they will do. If that healthy welfare card that they did publicly didn't show you how awful they could be, mark my words, it's about to get exponentially worse. Give them time. What they did on Nauru and everything else, what they're doing to the Biobella family, they do that publicly. What are they doing privately? Okay. Gillard was grossly underestimated as leader. There was a number of potential female Labor leaders and deputies in the wings. Right now, Albanese is pretty safe and really popular. Yeah. You know what I think Anthony Albanese has a real shot? Not because he's a man. I think that plays a role. I think that this country doesn't treat women the way it should. Now, why would I say that? Look at what those women went through when they came up with the rape allegations. Some of them could prove it. One even spoke about an incident where they had the cleaner come in before even the police were called. Now, have a look at those incidents and how we treat women when they're raped. We haven't learned how to deal with women in this country at all. We are 50% of the population, and yet we still treat women awfully. Women in politics, women in power, we pretend like the only way that they ever got there was through sleeping with someone. Like they didn't earn it. And the real shame is that the Liberal Boys Club, they didn't earn it. They got it through their buddies. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they all sort of go to the same schools. And it's not, through talent that Tony Abbott became Prime Minister. No, it's not through talent that he ever got handed a scholarship either. Do you know what it was? It's who you knew. It's the boys' club. It's slap each other on the back, tell each other that they were awesome. So it's not that I don't think any woman in the Labor Party would be a fantastic leader, because I do. It's that I don't think this country respects it enough. Any woman in this country enough to be decent. This is now contingent on who we want to be. When Anthony Albanese is done, and I'm hoping that there's like this reset in our thinking, and I'm hoping our take on Jacinda Ardern has really changed things. Look, that woman was able to breastfeed in the middle of her prime ministerial role. That's incredible. Now, not just incredible for one reason, but for many. She's the first leader of the free world that's ever had a baby like that. Not just had a baby, but openly spoke about what it was like to be pregnant and having a baby and doing all those types of things, and then talking about having the house husband. And I think Jacinta Ardern really, I think that she changed the way that we did this. Not that our own Labor women couldn't. It's that we were so toxic with the conservative views of weirdness that somehow we normalized how they were treating the women. Jacinta Ardern really is the hero in all of it. I mean, people in New Zealand love her. We love her. Well, I hear every day people saying to me whenever I talk about Jacinta Ardern, can't we just sort of pretend like we're part of New Zealand and sort of annex ourselves? Because she doesn't do it based upon who voted for her. She doesn't just do it because she's a woman. She doesn't just do it because it's popular. She even does things that are widely unpopular. Like, it was not popular for her to lock the country down over 2 cases. But she did it, and she made the right move, and she stuck to it. Making difficult decisions is what she does. And she does it with such grace and elegance that you can't argue with her. You can't go, oh, I'm just unhappy now, I'm going to go this way. No, because she's going to call you on it. Eventually, see, here's the thing. I would love to be a fly on the wall as she's talking to Scott Morrison. Oh, my God. Because I'd imagine that she'd humiliate him every time they talk. Every time. Not just once or twice. Because she knows what it is. And she earned every step of that. Just like our Labor people, they've earned it. Every woman in both parties found a way to be there. I'd in fact say that if you're part of the women group in the Liberal Party, not only did you earn your place to be there, but you had to go through a lot of gross stuff to get there. Look at how horribly they treat their own women. They don't care. It's gross. Picture being a woman, right? And it was weird when you seen Julie Bishop ride off into the sunset, you know, with her little red shoes like she's Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. That was weird for a few reasons. One, because the Liberal Party openly didn't support her at all. 2, they barely wanted to discuss her leaving politics. And 3, they forgot that she actually earned that position. Whether I liked her policies or not, it's irrelevant. Whether I believe that she is an awful conservative is irrelevant. She earned it. She earned that place. Now, think about how awful they can be as well. And have a look at what they did when they got this little bit of power. The women were pretty awful. Have a look at what Bronwyn Bishop did. The moment she had power in the Speaker's position, I've never heard so many people kicked out as when she became Speaker. It's almost as if she knew what she should have done but didn't care because she wanted to be buddies with them all. And they made a big deal out of how she flew a helicopter around and whatever, and that was a big deal. But that's not what made her unpopular. What made her unpopular was being a conservative woman. The women in the politics is important. Even if we think that these women aren't going to be powerful. Behind the scenes, like every woman, they're doing something. Like, you can bet I can hear Tanya Plesbeck and Penny Wong in the background and many other women in the Labor Party going, go to the party room with this. You can see the drive of these women. And when we're ready, we're going to get them. But I don't want to wait too long for that. So when Anthony Albanese has fixed up this nation, I'm definitely calling for a woman to take that job. I know Christina Keneally has never tipped her hat at doing it. I don't even know if she can because she's American. But she's an amazing speaker. there's so many women with talent. The reason I want to push Penny Wong so much is not only is she intelligent, but have a look at her background. Her background is super interesting. Her educational background. She's got this amount of knowledge that you need to tap into. Don't take my word for it. Take a look at her. She has the grace to, when she gets trolled, she knows how to come for you. She will do it. She'll uppercut you and make it look like it was a fairy tap. It really got smacked. You know, the thing that intrigues me about the women that we talk about as this year's ending, they've been the most vocal during this pandemic. We've heard from women leaders like Anastasia Palaszczuk, Gladys Berejiklian. They enlarged what we were doing as a nation. The Prime Minister was kind of like this weird sideshow that we were looking at going, do something, guy. And that's basically what I started to say at these press conferences is, do something, guy, because the Prime Minister never, ever stepped up to be a leader. And it got a bit weird as we're relying on Gladys Berejiklian to say something. And they were so quick because she wanted to follow Scott Morrison. And Scott Morrison had all these failures. They were like, we need someone to throw under the bus. Why not be the woman? Just let it go. I know Gladys has done a lot of crimey things. And I know ICAC's coming for her. There's definite links to her being crimey. Just hang with me a sec on that one. What if I told you that the Prime Minister has done way, way worse? Now, what if I told you that they covered her up each and every time? What if I told you not only did they cover up each thing that the Prime Minister does and they make sure that it ends out on the election cycle? What if I told you that there was no oversight on that? No federal ICAC to walk in and go, hey, don't do that. Like the Barrier Reef Fund. Or, being super crimey with these car park deals and, pork barreling and all these other super bad things that you're not supposed to do. Oh, and the sex scandals. When the Conservatives, they're really, really obsessed with sex, those people. It's weird. Like, you listen to a Conservative, they're more concerned with, like, what people's sex lives are doing than actually leading a nation. The US is a perfect example of this. The Conservatives are all like, what's a woman doing with her body? That's my body, damn it. They become weirdly obsessive about some really bizarre things. I think Gladys Berejiklian did the wrong thing and she should have stepped down. But I think the Prime Minister has done way worse. This vaccine rollout wasn't just a cock-up. The no quarantine facilities wasn't just a stuff-up. It was all deliberate. The Ruby Princess, the wanting to unlock the states before they were even vaccinated. He did so much wrong, so many crimey things. Behind the scenes, he's got a lot of money stacked up into these safe Liberal Party seats to keep getting elected. And Labor seats, well, he doesn't have to fund those because he doesn't think that you need it. Because safe Labor seats, he's not interested in. He's not interested in governing for the nation. Now tell me how that's not crimey. Prove it. Prove to me that that's not crimey. But why is it crimey? Because when you're a leader, you need to lead the whole nation as a whole. You can't just pick out, like playing darts, and pick a spot. I'd like it if you played darts even, because at least there'd be a chance that he'd hit something else in the country rather than safe Liberal seats. But he can't even do that. He had Georgina Downer hand out checks at the last election when she wasn't even elected. Now, show me how that's not corrupt. I put it to you that Gladys Berejiklian was thrown under the bus to keep the Prime Minister secure. What if he did that? Do you care? Is that something that you want him held accountable for? I get it. Gladys is evil. John Barilaro, pretty evil. Killing koalas, pretty awful, right? But who was she following? Was she following her own intuition, or was she getting calls from her boyfriend that had very close ties to the Prime Minister? Who was she listening in response to the COVID response? Yeah, I'm going to put it to you like this. Gladys Berejiklian was not exited out because it was just ICAC. She was exited out because it was convenient for the Prime Minister. Notice how we stopped talking about how insane he is? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, no. But I honestly believe that there is something in it. And I think we need to look at it as a whole. I think that we are intelligent enough to look at both issues and go, sure, there's Gladys Berejiklian in one hand doing something very crimey. There's the Prime Minister in the other one doing something crimey. Together, they're being very crimey. But why is it only Gladys Berejiklian that took the fall? That should be something that should be ticking. That should be ticking. It should interest you as to why that happened. Why did the Prime Minister pretend like South Australia and Tasmania never existed during this pandemic? Because they followed the same rules as Victoria and Queensland. He didn't even govern them at all. How is that not crimey? How is that not yucky? Like I spoke about when I first started, he called New South Wales the gold standard because he had Gladys Berejiklian where he wanted her. Even as the ship was going down, he was clinging to that like never before. You got to think, why isn't he visiting the Premier of South Australia? Seems a bit weird, right? Seems a bit weird that he wouldn't want the subs deals to go to South Australia since it's now a Liberal state. Seems a bit weird that he still wanted to do a deal with the US and pay more money and more time for these subs and things. Well, have I got a story to sell you? See, here's the thing. I don't think South Australia has tipped their hat enough to the Prime Minister. And I think he knows it's not secure. I think he watched them try to sell off the power grid and a few other things in South Australia. And I think he knows that it won't be Conservative for long and that they've made a mess of things. The COVID response is pretty responsible, but everything else is a shit show. So why would you go there? Why wouldn't you go to Tasmania and promote their awesomeness? Not just because there was an awful tragedy. I don't know if you'll see the Premier of Tasmania or anything like that. But you should find it interesting too that he hasn't mentioned them. I find it interesting. He didn't say anything to the Northern Territory. You have to wonder, right? As grimy and gross as what Gladys Berejiklian is, even you have to wonder, why did it go down like that? ICAC has its eyes on Lots of different premiers. Right now, I hope that they're looking into them all. I hope that they are having a good look at every premier around the country to keep them honest. Why? Because I think that every leader does have a propensity to do something that's not always great. I like the Queensland Premier. I like the Dan Andrews. IBAC is currently looking into Dan Andrews. Do I think that they're doing anything crimey? No. But do I think that they do need oversight? Absolutely. It's the same reason I want federal Labor to introduce an ICAC. Not because I just want them to get the Liberal Party, but because I want them to get the Labor Party too if they're dirty. I don't want corruption to live in politics. Look, I know that you can't essentially stamp it all out, but I do think that you need something, a body that says, hey, we're kind of not going to let you do that. And I think it's important because I think the country needs integrity. And I think that you can't just have it for the government of the day. I think that you can't rail against it like the Liberal Party did when they come for Gladys Berejiklian, but it was fine to go after, say, the Labor people. Eddie O.B. I don't think you can tip your hat and then go, no, it was cool. What happened with Eddie O.B. is cool. And it should have had all this oversight. They seem really, really keen to call it, some hatchet job whenever it comes to get them. It kind of occurred to me that would a bottle of Grange just get them out anymore? There was a part of me that was like, I wonder if I just enter a little expensive bottle of Grange and fundraise for it, and thought Scott Morrison was stupid enough not to declare it. Would that be enough to get us a new election? I was being a bit sneaky and horrible, and yeah, it occurred to me that there's a good chance that Scott Morrison probably would have to go. But they don't have any standards. There's no watchdog looking over the top. Do you think Labor is introducing one because they think that they're just going to get the Liberal Party? No. Because they don't want their own. Look at Christina Keneally. The very second she thought something was up with her to go beat, she was like, hey, yeah, over there, go and get him. I don't mind telling you when they do something crimey. And I think that that's important. I think that that kind of integrity matters. And if you're interested in that level of integrity, do something about it. Do it at the ballot box. Don't let the crazies tell you that this is just another little hatchet job of whatever party of the day. And, you have a look at what the Liberal Party did in New South Wales. They were stripping ICAC of its funds each and every year. Do you know what Victoria did? They're also getting looked at. But they added money to it. Why? Because they thought that it needed to be well funded. That's what a good government does. It well funds the oversight. I believe Labor would do that too. Federal Labor would have funded to the hilt to make sure that the integrity unit even got them if it needed to. It's been proven time and time again that when Labor has a scandal, they step out. And they go, no, my bad. Have a look at Thompson. He's going through, I can't think of his first name. I might have to look that up. I know Thompson. AOP. Of course I spelled it wrong because I do that. Craig Thompson. Have a look at him. He is in really big hot water right now. Labor isn't shining away. Widespread hostile trolling. Thank you, my friend. Well done. You went well. Labor isn't shying away from that. Do you know what Craig Thompson did? I did speak about this before. Hold on. Which one's that? Oh, damn. Okay, he got granted bail because after being charged over migration fraud. Labor has made lots of statements on it. In fact, they've asked that if he did the wrong thing, he should go to jail. It's a little weird that you have Labor going, yeah, okay, lock him up, he did the wrong thing. You have the Liberal Party sort of bucking it and going, let's see what it brings. Labor's like, if he did it, let's do it. You know, that there should tell you which side has integrity. The one that's going, hey, you do the crimey thing, you got to go. Look, I know that Labor had their doubts about Craig Thompson, hence why they injected him from the party many years beforehand. I don't know if they knew it was this evil, but I think they knew something was up. They're like, no, we'll wash our hands of you. I think people in his own circle actually brought him under. Why do I think that? Because that's how it generally works. Someone has to rat on you. Think of it like this. They didn't just stumble across this information on Craig Thompson. Someone had to tell a story. Who told it and why? Generally, you'll find it's an inside source, particularly with something like migration fraud. Those papers are pretty hard to come by. And the Liberal Party is taking credit for taking him down. So, what are you left with? Inside sources. Labor doesn't like it. And they openly express that too, by the way. If you think I'm kidding, check out Christina Keneally's speech when EDOB was going down. She openly said he should go to jail if he did it. But they're not the only examples that you can point to. There are many. Have a look at how quick they were when they got upset about the stuff going on with Kevin Rudd. The party was like, no, he's not behaving in a way that we need him to. I like Kevin Rudd. I think he's a fantastic leader. But have a look at how quick they were like, no, this isn't going the way we planned. And that part's important. Labor won't tolerate the kind of crimey kind of stuff that you're seeing now. But don't just do it because you want to see an integrity commission, a climate change policy, a daycare policy, and Medicare funded properly, the ABC funded well, and electric vehicles to become cheaper, and many more policies that they have on the table that are really, really good for this country, that apprenticeships will be properly funded and be free for a lot of people, where they bring down the prices of universities. Do it because you know that that's working for you and your better interest. Do it because Labor won't have this bright idea to go, hey, you know that old age pension that you earned? They're not going to call it a welfare payment. The Liberal Party will. Also, that brings me to negative gearing and other things. I'm hearing that they're not going to say it publicly that it's going to go, but if he gets power, I have a feeling, I'm hearing that Labor does have a plan to deal with negative gearing and franking credits. But we'll have to see what happens and see how much power he gets. Anyway, that's me. And this is another This Week in Politics. I hope to see you next week. And very soon I'll have a very new setup so I can, after Christmas, play videos and all sorts for you and show you graphics and other things. I'm sure it's not too fun looking at just this. It's been an amazing evening. And as always, share what you know, because the knowledge that you have might really be useful to other people. Not just might, it probably is. Remember, life is about learning, and don't stop. Get vaccinated, stay safe, wear your mask, and for the love of God, stay away from vulnerable immune people. I know you want to see them and hug them and be all over them. I do too. But this Christmas, if you really love them, you'll teach them how to video chat. Now, as always, it's been a beautiful evening. I will see you next week, same time, same place, and hopefully someone will be able to join me on panel, because this isn't doing it for me either. All right, love you guys. Bye.